What's up? What's up? It's your real time. And it's time for another Let's Talk. And today, let's talk about are trans men lesbians, right? So, of course, in TikTok land, everybody is going crazy on whether or not trans men can be lesbians. And for those who don't know, trans men are biological women who transition into being a man or living their life as a man. So they are a trans man. Everything about them, they've got on the testosterone. In some instances, they may have had engrafted a penis in place. The whole point of them transitioning is so they can live their life in existence as a man, right? But here recently, at least on TikTok, there's been debates on whether or not a trans man can be a lesbian. And for those of you who don't know what a lesbian is a woman who loves women, right? Biological women who love women, right? So there is a bit of a nuance. But let's just take a look. So we're going to look at one of the content creators that's giving their opinion on this matter. And then I'm going to chime back in. All right, you ready? Let's see. This content creator is NB Therapist. NB Therapist. All right, that's what the name is. Let's see what MD Therapist has to say on this matter.
So, according to my For You page, we are somehow and for some reason again having the debate of whether or not trans men can be lesbians. And here's the thing, this is not the correct question to be asking. That's not the question. Because the question should be, do trans men that identify as lesbians exist? Yeah, they do. That's it. They can, they do. Like, it's not anything other than that. So, trans men who identify as lesbians, do they exist? Yes. Do you have to be one? No. So it's not like, can trans men identify as lesbians? The answer is yes, because they do. Because that's not the right that's not the right question to be asking. So, I've never tapped in on the conversation because I don't find the need to, but at this point, I'm just like, yo, what? It happens. It occurs. Trans men that exist as lesbians, it's a thing. So, you don't have to. That's cool. But also, why are we asking this question? Like, they exist. Ooh, that was a good clap. All right.
Okay, so again, remember when I was talking about the trans women and I say that the word play within the community now is a clusterfuck. And this is one of those situations yet again. Okay? Because we do know that trans men are biological women. And technically, if they are dating a woman and women who love women or lesbians, then yeah, they would technically be a lesbian. However, since a transition has occurred, they really now fall into another category. All right? Back in the day, the trans community transition into the opposite sex or gender so they could change their whole scope and experience, right? The whole purpose of a woman transitioning from being a woman to a man was to live that experience as a man, to accept all that comes with being a man, right? And so now the lines have been blurred. And because now this community is so fluid, individuals who have transitioned from a biological woman to a trans man are calling themselves lesbians. And to me, that's I think that goes against the original purpose of transition. Now, I would assume it's because of the lack of community with, available as being a man, right? As well as not wanting to adapt the label straight. Because if you're now identifying as a man and you date a woman, you're now in that aspect being considered straight, right? Now, most trans individuals will tell you that being referred to as anything that reminds them of who they were would trigger their dysphoria. So, a trans man who is a biological woman who's now identifying as a man, and any reference of that, hence being called a lesbian, would trigger the uh, dysphoria that they have, right? Because that's what they're transitioning into a man is that they have dysphoria as a woman. So I don't know if this is like a new thing or I don't know. Most trans men they want to be referred to as men. They want that masculine identification. They don't want to be called someone's girlfriend, someone's woman, or someone's they don't want anything really to have to do with anything of feminine nature. That's the reason why they're transitioning into being a man. And lesbians are women who love women. So if you are calling yourself a trans man but a lesbian, you're literally calling yourself a woman. And so by the evaluation of words and their definition and meaning, trans men are not lesbians and would fall up under the category of pansexual or queer. Because that pansexual label opens it up to you could a pansexual, you could still be a biological woman transition to a man that loves women, right? Queer, that's a good option for you as well. Trans men call themselves lesbians, as men also opens up a can of worms that men, as in biological men, can be lesbians, which is problematic in and of itself because we already know that the men are trying to infiltrate the lesbian community by any means necessary. It really seems like the lesbians are getting the short end of the stick. I just, and this is why a lot of folks are now going toward using the WLW instead of the title lesbians, or just leaving the community altogether. Yeah. And again, what you calling a trans man a lesbian offend their transition. Like, what is the point? What was the point of you transitioning to live your life as a man if you still want to be called a bitch? Really? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, really, if a trans man who calls himself a lesbian, you have reduced yourself to a souped up stud. You know what I mean? If you're looking at words, definitions, and their meaning. And we understand that, being a lesbian is lit. We understand that. right? But we also have to realize that lesbians are an exclusive group of individuals, right? And once that transition takes place, you now fall under the umbrella of queer or pan, right? And when you look at the dynamics of it, and just out of respect, first of all, the means that a trans man goes to be a man is going to turn off a lesbian. However, a queer person, a pansexual person, will be attracted to that. But again, most lesbians are going to want to say, "This is my wife, this is my woman, this is my girlfriend, this is my bitch." You know what I mean? And wouldn't that offend you as a lesbian? And I've known lesbians who have dated trans people who just slid into, even though they are lesbians, they have slid into the pansexual label just not to offend the trans man that they're dating. Yes, technically they are lesbians, but words have meaning for a reason, right? And it's like if you go through all that the process, the transition, you taking the testosterone, you even got your titties chopped up, you got your coochie sewed up, or not, some of them don't. But if you go through the whole process of being considered a trans man, only to be called, still be called a bitch, to still be called a woman, to still be called a lesbian, it just seems like all that work was done in vain, and it's not being taken serious because how people are going to analyze that based on definitions and words. But hey, that's just my opinion. You all can comment below what you think. Again, the fluidity of the community. I think it's the new people. It's the new people just trying to blur the lines and not stand on. My thing is, if you transition, stand on that. I know we're lit, but you're now have slid into the pansexual queer label again, according to definitions, according to words, and just out of respect for your transition. But hey, that's all I got for today. Y'all hit the thumbs up button, comment, let me know what you think. Until then,